Dungeon Lore, Part 1. Arx Corinium, First Seed Report. Officer's Log, Centurion Pontius. Building a fort in a swamp is no trivial task, but my men and I have accomplished it with Arx Corinium. It was a battle the entire duration, with insect-borne disease, with the wildlife of the marshlands, but the Empire wanted a foothold in this region, and we provided one. Unfortunately, as of this writing, we've packed our arms and armor on orders from Colonel Marinus, and prepare to leave our work behind. The Colonel cites the continued loss of half a dozen soldiers every month in maintaining Arx Corinium as detrimental to the war effort. I agree, and would note that I predicted this outcome when we arrived over a year and a half ago. I said as much to the Colonel, who ordered that the project proceed. This isn't a statement of complaint, but of fact. Construction suffered numerous complications. The bog impeded our progress at every turn, and it became clear the initial foundation we built would sink after the first month. When we moved our location further to the north, we met a fierce Wamasu that cost me 10 men to chase off the premises. After repeated encounters, our war wizard Belisario named it Ganaton, the Tempest, after the bolts of lightning that the beast emits from every orifice. Ganaton was the Moncure of a hated aunt, rumored to possess orcish blood. The dense humidity was another foe, turning our plate armor to steel barrels full of sweat during the early months of construction. It goes against regulation, but I allowed my soldiers the luxury of cloth armor during the summer. It was that or death from heat stroke. We would have been at a disadvantage had we come under attack, but any enemy marching towards Arx Corinium would be half dead by the time they reached us. In any event, it never happened. Battle found us just the same. Every beast in this swamp, large or small, is a walking death trap, and some days we fought sword to stinger with insects the size of a grown man's head. Other days our mages contended with the likes of Gentank and the Tempest, who continued to terrorize the fort. He raised the eastern wall a dozen times, and I regret I will never be allowed the luxury of mounting his skull on my mantle. But if it means we finally get to leave, I will gladly allow him his life. As I look back on this last year and a half, at the resources and manpower it took to construct Arx Corinium, I can't say it's been worth it. Again, this isn't a statement of grievance. I bear my superiors no ill will for my orders. However, I would note that I made several warnings in advance of this project and have compiled copies of my letters to my immediate superior, Colonel Marinus, detailing the reasons why I believed the construction of Arx Corinium could prove disastrous for the Empire. I want to clarify that this is not a declaration of failure on anyone's part, either for myself, my men, or Colonel Marinus. I am fully aware that the decision falls to Tribune Hilario, whom I encourage to read the letters I mention above. I've already sent word and made them available for any officer to pursue at the Imperial City Military Archives. Burning Vestige, Volume 1, by Warlock Endil. This collection contains privileged information regarding the Daedric Prince's Mehrunes Dagon. In case you've been living in an Ayleid ruin since the dawn of recorded history, involvement with Dagon and his ilk is frowned upon quite fiercely by most populations of Tamriel. Having this book or its companion volume in your possession could earn you suspicion from your neighbors, as well as agents of the law. In many districts, worship of the Master of Razors is illegal, and communion rituals involving the Daedric Prince are punishable by death. Amongst even the Daedric princes, none are more openly concerned with the suffering of mortals. Whenever Dagon appears, he leaves destruction in his wake, and contact with the Master of Razors often results in death for the conjurer, along with everyone in the vicinity. Sudden floods, thunderstorms, and other natural disasters all over Tamriel have been tied to communications with Mehrunes Dagon, and the most detailed account I've read about occurred in Eastmarch. Branvad Frostfinger, a witch of Eastmarch, is said to have sacrificed 13 innocents to Dagon in a single night, prompting the Daedric prince to briefly open a portal from the Deadlands to Skyrim. The only witnesses were members of the Direfrost family, a clan of witch hunters who managed to find and slay Hravand. Immediately following, they came under mysterious and brutal attack themselves. Their leader, Yulthon, was the only survivor, who later wrote in his memoirs, "We followed the stench of burning flesh for half a mile, and we caught up to Harvanvad at nightfall by the Sea of Ghosts. She lay cackling among her 13 victims, whose bodies had been stacked in a mass grave, encircled by spidery writing. Slaying her was an easy task. All it took was a single silver bolt. But when the deed was done, the air suddenly began to boil and crack. Fearing some residual spell, I had my men retreat up the nearest pass, where we watched the snow below catch fire and the sky split apart with flame. We turned to flee, but it was too late. Fire poured from the wound in the air and engulfed my 30 men. I tried to help them, but the flames would not die and would not burn my flesh." A voice bellowed from burning moor above, "You will suffer better among the living." Many, including the members of the Mages Guild, are skeptical of Yulthon's story, respected as he was among the Direfrost hunters. They found no sign of Mehrunes Dagon at the Sea of Ghost, save the blasted mirrored sand. Obviously, the Direfrost disagree, but there was still the matter of 30 missing hunters. The Direfrosts have since intensified their war against the covens of Eastmarch. The Mages Guild, however, has struck the event from their records of note, citing the blasted sand at the Sea of Goats as a meteorological phenomenon. But I believed that Yulthon was correct. I was there, as a senior advisor on the party that surveyed to that beach. Volume 2 of this collection contains a detailed account of everything I found at the Sea of Ghosts, including half of the spidery circle that Yulthon describes. Any aspiring conjurer who wants a chance at contacting Mehrunes Dagon should follow me there. Civility and Etiquette, Volume 5, Undead, by Choristier, Part 1. It is a popular belief that all undead and their phantasmal revenants are slaves to their necromantic biology. Indeed, like most predatory wildlife, many of these creatures exist only to absorb or consume the energy of the living. They should never be bargained with or reasoned with, and Ultima should deal with such creatures in the way she would handle a rabid wolf or a malevolent orc, with extreme prejudice. However, there are those among the post-living that possess or have achieved sentience, like vampires, liches, and wraiths. Dialogue is possible with creatures such as these, as long as one keeps certain discretions in mind. 1. Any undead who speaks is bound to be powerful. Any creature whose magic is potent enough to allow its sentience in death deserves an Ultima's begrudging admiration. 2. An undead can never be trusted. Though we should respect the undead and their power, all undead want something from the living, and there is little to stop them from taking it. An Ultima must remain guarded in their presence, always. 3. An undead might not be as she appears. Many powerful mages possess illusory spells to alter their appearance, and so too do the undead. The wandering spirit of a lost child could be a starving lich in disguise. That said, there is much an Ultima can learn from the accumulated knowledge of a sentient undead, if dialogue can be achieved. The discerning Ultima could learn of ancient spells from time immemorial, first-hand accounts of historical events, or the locations of lost relics, if said Ultima can pose salient questions. When conversing with the likes of the undead, an Ultima wants to maintain an appearance of 1. Humility. An Ultima's heritage should afford her much, and in an ideal world, all peoples, including liches, vampires, and wraiths, would adhere to the Ultimary concept of class and proceed accordingly. However, most undead, even Ultimary undead, rarely adhere to social conventions. As such, even the most well-bred of Ultima should refer to point 1 in the previous listing. Think of the undead as elders, powerful, unflinching, and prone to anger. 2. Intelligence. As is true with the Ultima, especially well-bred Ultima, the undead do not suffer fools without being overtly obvious. An Ultima wants to seek openings to display magical acumen or cunning, to show that she is not to be trifled with. Again, think of intimidating a stern elder into compliance. 3. Discipline. Assuming an Ultima can enter into a peaceful communication with a lich, wraith, vampire, or otherwise, she will undoubtedly have many questions, but she should be wary of the number of questions she asks. Any undead will impart its knowledge willingly or not at all. In part 2 of this collection, I'll detail the hurdles that may come up in conversation with the undead, specifically with the wraiths, vampires, and liches, all of which require different operations of social intelligence. Civility and Etiquette, Volume 3, Wood Orcs, Part 1. Elden Hollow, by Corsair, Sage Sojourner. It is said that the orcs came to be when the Aldmeri god Trinimac was devoured by the Daedric prince Boethia. As the myth goes, Boethia excreted Trinimac's remains, and those Ultima who followed Trinimac rubbed that excrement upon themselves to become the orcs. Perhaps that's just a myth, but the imagery is appropriate, repugnant, ridiculous, and a little comical, like the orcs themselves. It is said that after a time, a sect of these people travelled into Valenwood and developed a tangential culture, the Wood Orcs. For dealings with the Orsinium Orcs, see Volume 2. The Orcs in general are difficult for Mer to interact with, but these Wood Orcs are similar in physicality to our Wood Elf cousins, the Bosmer. The Wood Orcs are blunter and more ill-tempered than the Bosmer, but should be handled in much the same way, with patience, guidance, and a careful eye. Without a proper Aldmeria hand to lead them, both races have the potential to devolve into self-destructed, orderless savages that are an inconvenience and a danger to all civilized people around them. So, how should an Ultima deal with a Wood Orc? First, earn her respect. Like her northern Orsinium cousins, the more common orc variety, a Wood Orc admires physical strength, but she also prizes agility, speed, and geographic knowledge, equating that with tactical knowledge. Display some semblance of competence in these areas, and you will earn her begrudging appreciation. Here are a few ways to begin a conversation as a sign of respect. Make sure to introduce yourself or at least establish eye contact first. 1. Offer to begin an unarmed altercation and force the Wood Orc to submit. They enjoy fisticuffs. 2. If you find yourself walking with a Wood Orc, gain the lead and maintain it. This may lead to a foot race. Win it and win the Wood Orc's approval. 3. Find a large rock equal or greater than body size and hurl it within view. Use a strength spell if you must, but don't let the Wood Orc know. If you think this sounds like impressing your way into a tribe of athletic children, you would not be far wrong. Use the above methods with caution. Predictable as they may be, the Wood Orcs are individuals and require improvisation in dealing with them. And here are a few things an Ultima should not do when interacting with Wood Orcs. 1. Flaunt magical abilities. Though the Ultima know that displaying advanced magic shows a lifetime of dedication and mastery of the highest craft, all Orcs bear a cultural distrust of magic. In their ignorance, they believe magic's primary function is oppression of their people and often brindle at its use. Unless you're intending to ignite a battle, never hide in the trees of a Woodork's territory. Walk in the open. As our Bosma cousins have learned, the Woodorks do not take kindly to those who stalk their forests. They equate secret movement with malevolence and cowardice. In part 2 of this collection, I'll detail specific hurdles that may come up in conversation with a Woodork, such as religion and Malakath, the Woodork equivalent of the Asinium strongholds. I hope you've been enjoying these lore readings, and if you have, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.